In anticipation of tomorrow's budget speech, I've brought two of our tax specialists with Mazars to discuss some matters around the budget speech. I have with me Bernard Sachs, tax partner at Mazars, and also Mike Touche, National Head of Tax at Mazars South Africa. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
So, Minister Gigaba stated in the midterm budget speech that we are approximately 50 billion rand short and have a budget deficit of 50 billion 2017 and 18 year, and also a budget deficit of 70 billion growing to the 18 and 19 tax year. He stated that there will be three methods of assisting South Africa in gaining more revenue, and the firstly will be to cut expenditure, secondly by borrowing more, and thirdly by increasing taxes. So I have these two gentlemen with me today in order to discuss the possible methods he will look at in order to get this additional revenue. So firstly, Bernard, welcome.
Thank you, Tertius.
One of the most discussed forms of revenue which you'll be looking at will be VAT. You maybe be telling me more about possible VAT increases. Is there scope for it? How much can we expect to be gaining from this?
Tertius, there are three main areas that the Minister could tackle. The first is in the 2017 budget, we saw an indication that they may look to withdraw the exemption on fuel. Now, that has the ability to collect probably about 35 billion rand, although part of that would be given back in the form of input tax credits for businesses that are entitled to input taxes. It wouldn't allow input tax credits for businesses such as bus companies, which provide exempt services, so they don't in fact they're not in fact registered as VAT vendors for that purpose. So that's the one area. The second main area is you could increase the VAT rate. The probability is either 1% or 2% if a VAT rate is for general VAT rate general VAT increase takes place. And the third area is a multi-tiered VAT system. Now, if I could just elaborate a little. We presently have a two-tiered VAT system. We have zero rate, and the standard rate of 14%. So the zero rate applies for predominantly for exports and certain basic foodstuffs. 14% applies for everything else. Now, what it could introduce is one or more additional rates for certain categories of luxury goods, and we could, for example, see a VAT rate of 20% on high-end motor vehicles.
Okay, so your luxury sport cars,
yeah,
those type of products.
Yes, that's correct.
Mike, also obviously in South Africa, your individuals, your personal income tax rates, it's been hammered lately with bracket creep is being the word of the day for the past 2 years. We've seen the introduction of the super tax bracket. How will the minister try and get more from the people of South Africa?
Last year, I think, was one of the first times he didn't give enough relaxation for common for bracket creep. Now, bracket creep is to take the effect of inflation into your tax tables. And last year, he didn't give us the full bracket creep relief, and I can't remember exactly what amount he didn't give us, but he didn't give us the full amount. So this year he could possibly follow a similar tact, where the bracket creep and the widening of the tables to take into account inflation, you may decide not to provide that relief to taxpayers. And overall in the past years that's been a total of 9 or 10 billion rand. If he gives half of it away, that gives him 5 billion. He's still got a long way to go for the balance. So one of the other areas, and we're reaching a stage in this country, they call it the macro curve, where we're at a rate of tax which is very high, and the Laffer curve is indicating to you that at some point, if you increase tax rate, you actually might reduce your revenue take for the fiscus. So, we're currently at a 45% marginal tax rate, which amongst our peers is getting quite high. And I think amongst our population and those type of taxpayers, it's something that is not going down too well, given that we're not really getting very much for our tax. I think our tax system is more of a wealth distribution mechanism as opposed to a service delivery mechanism. So, increasing that rate is a possibility, but they've obviously got to be concerned about increasing the rate could chase away some of our taxpayers. We as a firm have seen a number of people that have been immigrating out of this country, partially political and partially tax. So, I think they've got to be very careful if they are going to consider increasing rates. Maybe they should look at other avenues. We know that, yes, we spoke about that. 1% of that will give you 20 billion. An increase of 1% in the VAT rate should give you roughly 20 billion of revenue. 2% which will give you 40 billion. So, you're getting very close to covering the 50 billion gap this year or the 70 billion gap.
But in this political environment we're in, that rate is always, it's like we say, a political hot potato. People don't, they believe it's a tax that's going to affect the poor, where usually we are currently taxing, we've like I said, introduced the super tax bracket of taxing the rich. But not politically, is there scope for it?
No. Tertius, I think it needn't be a political hot potato. Allow me to elaborate a little. Yes, the same rate of tax will be paid by both the poor and the rich. But because the rich will be consuming more, they will end up paying a lot more of the tax. And I think that's something that needs to be borne in mind. And I think that if they are serious about closing the budget deficit, this unfortunately is one area that they will have to look at very seriously. And I think that this year it will gain some more attention. I think that we will see some action on that, whether it's a general increase, a removal, a partial removal of the exemption, or the introduction of a luxury tier. I think something is going to happen on the VAT side.
I tend to agree with you, Bruno.
If you consider the tiered rates, that's going to be a bit of an admin nightmare. First, going to be SARS systems have to change, and then you also have to get business systems to change. So that could take a little bit of a longer period. So you possibly is left with the other two options. And it could be a combination of that. Increase the VAT rate by, say, 0.5% to 1%, and then deal with the zero rating of the fuel by eliminating that.
I don't see a 0.5% increase. I see either a 1 or a 2.
Whatever.
Yeah, you may be hopeful that it's only a half, but I think it's going to be either 1 or 2.
Maybe a 2, and if you see that the public don't like it, maybe just bring it back to a 1 or something.
But that's not impossible. I'd like to just, if I may, Tertius, just turn attention back to the income tax side of things, and much as I would like to think that Mike is right, that there isn't that much scope, we have had periods in the reasonably distant past, I think in the 70s and 80s, where we had marginal tax rates of 60%. And so it's not an impossibility. That's the one area where we could see individuals being hit. The other is, if they see a need for some form of rebuilding, they could introduce some form of a temporary tax, such as a levy. Or in years gone by, there was a loan levy, where what happened was a tax was imposed that was refunded at a later stage. So it was almost like a loan to the government. And perhaps we might just see a throwback to that kind of a strategy.
That'll be quite interesting to see. Obviously, back then South Africa was struggling, was not part of the global economy. Now it's a different situation. South Africa's sitting with a deficit which they want to take away. Maybe instead of borrowing money from outside, now you're borrowing money from your taxpayers, and that's quite an interesting view.
We had it on 2 occasions.
Yes,
we definitely did it.
Well, and also remember that with the credit rating downgrade, it's become more expensive for the country to borrow.
That's true.
So it may be an attractive option. And remember, I don't think there is one methodology that will eliminate the budget deficit. Yes, of course, we could go and increase VAT rates by 4% and end the deficit. But perhaps that's the end of the economy as well. So
Yes.
I think that there's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach here.
So
Something else that they could possibly look at on the individual side, we have seen them tinkering with the inclusion rate of capital gains into taxable income, and they could possibly increase that. So just as a bit of an explanation, at the moment 40% of any capital gain is brought into your taxable income, and as a result of our marginal tax rate being at 45%, that lands up with the effective tax rate of 18% of any capital gains in the hands of an individual. So you could possibly increase that increase the exclusion rate to the inclusion rate, not the exclusion, the inclusion rate to 50% or 60%
for the individuals.
for individuals. And politically that possibly will go down well, because capital gains and possibly gains or income that is made by the more wealthy part of our population. The other thing is, from a company's perspective, that inclusion rate is 80%. So we're almost close to 100%. You might well possibly just decide to increase that to 100%.
Now that you've touched on companies, I think it's a good point that we should maybe take. Is there scope to increase your company tax rate, your corporate tax rate? Mike, maybe I'll start with you.
Well, as an investment destination, you as a country want to be attractive, and one of those elements that does distract you is you've got relatively high tax rates. But if you consider the UK, that's sitting at a 21% tax rate. US also sitting close to 21%.
Yes, they started to decrease their tax rate in order
decreasing
to.
their tax rates. And if you want to start now attracting foreign direct investment, possibly that could change the point. So I think if we want to be anti-competitive, or if we don't want to be as competitive for foreign direct investment, which this country desperately needs, increasing the tax rate might just be a hindrance to bringing in further foreign direct investment. And as we saw, the State President Cyril Ramaphosa did say that at Davos there were a lot of people wanting to invest in the country. So you don't want, there seems to be an appetite, and you don't want to discourage that investment.
Let me take that same question, but just change it a little bit. So South Africa is sitting with growth rate south of 1%. Hopefully, people believe that Cyril Ramaphosa might be changing this, and he might get some more inflow of investment and so forth. What about a decrease in the corporate tax rate, thereby stimulating growth, trying to get more investment into the country, and thereby actually increasing your tax revenue? Is that a possibility?
Tertius, that's a really interesting question. So before I answer that, I'd just like to point out, presently there is a modest arbitrage opportunity between the marginal income tax rate for an individual and the tax rate for a company after applying the dividends tax rate. So I think it comes out to about 42.4 percent, if my math is correct, against 45. So on the one hand, one could see that gap closing by increasing the income tax rate to 30 for companies to 30%. But I do agree with Mike that I think that would probably be counterintuitive, in the sense that we wouldn't be attracting the foreign investment. And yes, I think that we would. I think that you might find that South Africa isn't too popular with the international community if it starts applying a 20% corporate tax rate, because it would then encourage multinationals to set up shop here. But selfishly from a South African point of view, I think it would be an outstanding opportunity. And again, back to my multi-pronged approach, it would be another arrow in his quiver of eliminating the deficit and creating real growth. So I think it's not impossible, but I do think that at the same time they will have to keep their eye on that arbitrage opportunity. There may have to be additional anti-avoidance measures to prevent people from taking that gap.
Okay, brilliant. I'd like to thank you. I think we've got a great idea of where the minister will be looking for additional revenue in this new budget speech. Let's hope he, like Bernard says, he takes a facet of each type of tax and tries to grow the tax revenue, but also keep it fair for all. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.